Good evening. Could you please be seated? I hate to break that up. I love to watch people talk. But my bosses in the back are saying I must get started. So welcome. My name is Evelyn Ellis, and this is the 17th annual Social Justice Awards, which were established back in 2002 by the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee, which is composed of a diverse membership from across Dartmouth. These awards were established to recognize individual alumni, faculty, staff, and student groups for their commitment to the causes of social justice, civil rights, peace, education, public health, or environmental justice. This year's Social Justice Awards ceremony is sponsored by the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration, the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity, and the Dartmouth Center for Social Impact. As always, it is a joy to start the evening with the rockapellas.
We're going to do our best to behave. Hi everyone, we're so honored to once again be performing at the Social Justice Awards. We have two songs to share with you today, both of which were originally performed by a group called Sweet Honey and the Rock, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The first song is called Would You Harbor Me? Get asked the question, would you harbor people with certain identities, certain races, colors, creeds? When we sing this song, we ask the question to ourselves. We hope that you do as well. And the second song is called The Women Gather, which speaks to the ways that women come together, particularly in times of struggle. And we think that it's particularly relevant because we're honoring two really incredible women of color today. The Social Justice Awards, Deborah King, whom some of us who have had the honor to have had as a professor, and Tia Draper, who does really incredible work to catalyze institutional change here. Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, a person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a Tubman, a Garrett, a Truth, a fugitive or a slave? Would you harbor a Haitian, Korean, or Czech, a lesbian or a gay? Would you harbor a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a heretic, convict, or spy? Would you harbor a runaway woman or child, a poet, a prophet, a king? Would you harbor an exile or a refugee, a person living with AIDS? Would you harbor a
Korean or Czech, a lesbian or a gay. Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? Would you harbor me? Would I harbor you? He was her only child, her baby boy. She was his second daughter, a father's pride and joy. Somebody's mother, brother, best friend, sister, lover. Maybe an A1 student, running, hiding, taking cover. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. It doesn't matter where you're living. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. People say, not in this neighborhood. It doesn't happen here. Our kids have everything. What do we have to fear? But what about no one to say this happens every day? Guns and violence take our children. How much more death can come our way? The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. It doesn't matter where you're living. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. Don't you know? Some bullets find their targets, guns can take you right on cue. Some in the hands of babies or officials and their crew. When the brother had a gun, he fit the profile in my book. Running, hiding, taking cover, didn't take the time to look. Somebody's mother, brother, best friend, sister, lover. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. It doesn't matter where you're living. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. It doesn't matter where you're living. The women gather, crying tears that fill a million oceans. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're living. The women gather.
Every year, as we get closer to the Social Justice Awards, and I remind my family, we're getting close to the Social Justice Awards, they say, are the Rockapella singing? Yes, they are. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Tonight, we have the opportunity to have conversations with change makers. If you are returning to these awards for another year, what time is it now? What is it?
Time for change.
Okay, she's close. If you're new, and if they couldn't answer it, I'll remind you what time it is. It is, yes, it is Ellis Family Story Time. This is the time every year that I take, and I'll take it in the years ahead, to open these awards with a story from my Southern African American family journey to connect us all to this wonderful group of awardees. The stories keep building every year, and 2017 did not disappoint. For those of you who may have been out of the country last term, there was an election in the state of Alabama on December 12th. Actually, you pretty much needed to be on another planet to miss the discussion around the special election to replace Jeff Sessions in his seat in Congress. Those of you not following, like I do, famous Alabamians, Sessions is the Attorney General under the new president. I will pass on giving you my view of Mr. Sessions during this wonderful celebration, but I can state that he needed to be replaced in Alabama, and replacing any vacant congressional seat in the Deep South is never as simple as you might believe. Another matter I will pass on discussing this evening. There were minute-by-minute discussions on the national and the world stages about what could happen in the election between a liberal Democrat, Doug Jones, a member of a group that had not won a congressional seat in Alabama in 25 years, and an extremely conservative person who had a long track record of sexual misconduct regardless of who you chose to believe. Commentators often reminded us, and I think they were speaking directly to the black people, that we had not won in over 25 years, and breaking the backs of races and sexes in the black belt of Alabama was near impossible. I listened with much dread coming up to the December voting date. On December 4th, 8 days before the big election, I flew into Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. King's home state. I crossed the border into Alabama the following day with my two sisters, Hazel and Yolanda, with the help of an angel-like brother who changed the flat tire on my sister Hazel's car. Another family matter we will not discuss in full detail tonight. Have you noticed by chance how many things we don't discuss in the Deep South? I was there to spend a week with my family and friends, all black people of the Black Belt, living their lives as news commentators talked. I sat among the elders, the young, the professionals in the blue collar, the employed and the unemployed, and I heard their commitment to our homeland, sweet home Alabama. These black and African American people could tell you all the ways in which our people were suffering more now. They are suffering now as much as they ever have suffered. They could, and they would, with unparalleled accuracy, recount all the losses black and brown people have suffered over the past year. I listened to my people. I had to ask myself if any of the commentators on our major news networks bothered to talk to my people. If they had, they would have known that a tsunami of black and African American people would be at the polls come December 12th. The people that the state of Alabama could rely on to save itself from moral decay were sitting in their homes, planning their assault on the voting history of their dear state. The rest is history. I thought of some of you, awardees, as I read the results of the Alabama election. While I admit I was a nervous wreck on the day of the election, wondering what the racist machines in my home state would do to hinder my people from voting, I knew my people were determined, and their determination would not be deterred. Even if the president of the nation spoke out against them, they would not be deterred. I am sure you, our awardees, have over your lifetime felt discouraged, deterred, abandoned, and the list probably goes on. You are here tonight because, like the good people of Alabama, your moral values outweighed your fatigue. Your commitment to justice outweighed your doubt in the possibility of social justice for all Americans. Your love of humanity outweighed somebody else's hate. For these qualities, tonight we honor you. So let these awards begin. We will start with the individual awards. The first award is the Holly Fea Satea Award, and it's one of the newest of the awards. It was named for the Vice President for Institutional Diversity and Equity Emeritus, which recognizes a faculty or a staff member who is an enthusiastic and effective leader in advancing diversity and community. The other awards, the Martin Luther King Jr. Social Justice Awards, fall into 4 categories: a student organization, emerging leadership award, ongoing commitment award, and a lifetime achievement award. And there's the Dartmouth Center for Social Impacts Lester B. Granger Class of 18 Award for Lifetime Achievement. Each award recipient will receive a clock, and it's inscribed with their name and an engraving of Dartmouth Hall. We learned some time ago, my colleague can tell you, that we are to tell the awardees, you might want to leave that with us and have us mail it to you. You do not want to take it on the airplane or put it in your luggage. The gift of a clock is inspired by a quote by Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail, and it states, "We must use time effectively in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right." The presentation of awards will be followed by a conversation that I will lead with the honorees about their lives and careers working for social justice. I will read a short introduction, and for all of them, we really had to cut it, or we would be here all night. I'll read a short introduction of each winner, and then they'll join me at the table. Starting with the Holly Fea Satea Award. This year awardee is Dia Draper. Dia Draper, I'm going to bring you up when I finish, so you won't be by yourself so long. Dia Draper is often described as a warm spirit with a gift for inspiring others to live with joy and intention. Her ability to help others laugh at life's absurd twists causes those who cross her path to stop and take notice. Her curiosity for the human experience has led her around the world asking her favorite question, "What's your life about?" and helping people discover the answer. Dia is a graduate of the University of Virginia, where she developed a passion for the intersection of leadership, business, and education, and work that she is fortunate to pursue as an educator, coach, and an entrepreneur. She's a member of the senior leadership team at the Tuck School of Business with a focus on initiatives that promote a healthy community, culture, and environment. She is an alumna of Knowles, and that's that outdoor adventure leadership program. Semester at Sea, I think she likes being outside. Leadership, and a 2-time TEDx speaker. Dia lives with her wife, 2 dogs, a fish named Diego, and 30 undergraduate students in Dartmouth's Triangle House Living Learning Community. Please join me in welcoming Dia. next award is the Martin Luther King Social Justice Award for a student organization. It honors a student group for its commitment to promoting social justice in our community and beyond. The recipient of this year's award is Alpha Kappa Alpha. Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority was founded at Howard University as the first Black sorority and is dedicated to service to all humankind. The Xi Lambda chapter was chartered at Dartmouth College in 1983 and since has upheld the national standards along with a strong commitment to women of color at Dartmouth and to community service. Xi Lambda strives to provide a space on campus that uplifts students, challenges the status quo, and sheds light on local, national, and international injustice. Could all of the members of AKA just stand up so we can see you? And if I could have Alexandra Adams join us at the table. She's going to surrender. Can I get you from being there by yourself, dear? Now we're delighted to present the award for Emerging Leadership. The winner this year is George Bruton. George is a research scientist at Dartmouth Computer Science Department and an incoming PhD student at ETH Zurich, Switzerland. He was born and raised in Ghana. He graduated from Dartmouth College with a BA in computer science, modified with engineering, and an MS degree in computer engineering in 2016 and 2017, respectively. As you might have noted even before I finished that paragraph, he's an underachiever. At Dartmouth, he was an EE-Just Scholar, EE-Just Graduate Fellow, and a member of Caston Gartlett Senior Society. George is a social entrepreneur and founded NSF Foundation, an educational nonprofit, which he leads as the president, to accomplish their vision of spurring an innovation revolution in Africa. Toward that end, NSF runs 3 programs: Project ICE-West, an annual 3-week intensive innovation boot camp for high school students in Ghana that has impacted over 100 students over the past 5 years. STEM Wow is the weekly celebration of inspirational African women doing amazing work in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And it has reached over 30,000 people via Facebook, See Your Code, and a smartphone-based coding course that seeks to reach and teach millions across African continent how to code. George's work with NACISA has been featured in the Dartmouth Engineer magazine, Dartmouth News, and the Dartmouth, and led him to be invited as a delegate at the Reimagine Education Conference and the Clinton Global Initiative University meeting. Join me in a round of applause for George. Now we make our way to the Ongoing Commitment Award. I need you to show a lot of love to this person when he comes up. He traveled far away, really far away to get here. This year's winner is Dr. Zachary Kaufman. Zach, can I call you Zach? Zach Kaufman is co-founder and CEO of Vera Solutions, a social enterprise using cloud and mobile technology to help social impact organizations worldwide work more effectively and deliver better results. Since graduating from Dartmouth in 2008, Zach has worked for 10 years at the intersection of technology and the social sector, overseeing program evaluations in Southern Africa and Latin America, and architecting data systems for dozens of leading global health and education organizations. But since 2010, Vera Solutions has served more than 225 organizations in more than 45 countries and has grown to a team of 50, and their staff are on 4 continents. Some of Zach's clients include Gave Alliance, the Aga Khan Foundation, the Skoll Foundation, Elton John's Aid Foundation. Prior to founding Vera Solutions, Zach oversaw research, monitoring, and evaluation at Grassroots Soccer, which is local, and co-founded the Journal of Sport for Development, the first open access, peer-reviewed journal dedicated to advancing the evidence of programs using sport to promote health, development, and peace. Zach holds a PhD and a Master of Science in and here we're gonna go, epidemiology, getting there, from the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and has been recognized as a Marshall Scholar, Truman Scholar, Forbes 30 Under 30 Social Entrepreneur, Global Good Fund Fellow, and the Blonde Health and Social Innovation Fellow. Originally from Madison, Wisconsin, Zach lives with his wife, Elise, or Elsie, also a Dartmouth 08, in Geneva, Switzerland. Please help me welcome Zach. He also gets the award for the farthest away.
Only for now. He's coming to Zurich.
Oh, that's true. That's true. So true.
We're going to be coding up in the Alps.
The next Social Justice Award is for Lifetime Achievement. A professor here, dear professor here. And this award goes to Dr. Deborah King. Dr. King was born in Kansas City, Missouri, during the early 1950s. Professor King grew up in a racially segregated city, attending segregated schools and socializing in segregated theaters and parks. She became a beneficiary of the civil rights movement as its victories began dismantling legal and other institutional barriers. Those early experiences informed her understanding of the systemic nature of racial inequality, and most importantly, her recognition of the imperative to challenge it. Professor King's justice activism has engaged a number of issues, but the transformation of educational institutions has been her primary focus. Professor King has been at Dartmouth since 1980 and was the first African American woman to earn tenure. She has chaired the Department of Sociology and African American Studies program and served on the steering and personnel committees of the Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. Professor King has participated in limitless college-wide committees, workshops, conferences, retreats on anti-discrimination and diversity issues. As an officer in the Dartmouth Black Caucus, she led its efforts to establish the E.E. Just 1907 professorship in honor of a pioneering cellular biologist and one of Dartmouth's early Black graduates. Mentoring has been central in her career. In addition to students in her courses, she has served as a faculty advisor for the Mellon Mays Undergraduate Fellowship, Chavez Eastman Marshall Dissertation Fellowships as well. She has also mentored junior faculty members of color here at Dartmouth and elsewhere, and mentored any of us who have been in her presence, faculty or not. She's most proud of her 35-year involvement with the American Sociological Association's Minority Fellowship Program. Mentoring the next generations of scholars of color has been her enduring commitment and greatest joy. Her research and teaching interests includes race, class, and gender intersections, social control and law, and cultural sociology. Professor King recently completed a study of the role of Black women, both enslaved and freed, in the early histories of elite colleges, including Dartmouth, Bowdoin, Princeton, Harvard, and Yale. For decades, she has sought to complicate her understanding of social justice, to speak truth to power, and to nurture young activists. Please welcome Dr. King to the stage. We now move to Dartmouth Center for Social Impact, Lester B. Granger, Class of 18 Award. This year, the award is going to Dr. Patrick Terenzini of the Class of 64. Patrick T. Terenzini is a distinguished professor of higher education and senior scientist emeritus in the Department of Education Policy Studies and the Center for the Study of Higher Education at Pennsylvania State University. And he's an emeritus. He's a Vermont native. How many Vermonters out there? According to Dr. Terenzini, he has been in one kind of school or another, in one role or another, for all but 10 years of my life. In addition to his Dartmouth degree, English, Terenzini holds a Master of Arts, MAT, from Harvard and a PhD in higher education from Syracuse University. Dr. Terenzini began his career studying college students in Syracuse's Division of Student Affairs, and then as director of institutional research and assistant to the president for planning at SUNY Albany. Since 1986, he has held faculty appointments in the graduate higher education programs at the University of Georgia and Penn State University, from which he retired in 2010. He did not retire before suffering through my doctoral degree, which I did get. Throughout his career, Professor Terenzini's research focused on the effects of the college experience on students' cognitive and psychosocial development, persistence, and educational attainment. His studies consistently explored how those outcomes varied for different communities of students, as by gender, race, ethnicity, family, income, non-traditional students, and women and students of color in engineering. Several amicus briefs supporting college and university affirmative action programs and legal arguments before federal courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court, cite his research. His interest in the post-secondary education of students of color and low-income students originated during a Tucker Foundation-funded visit to several historically Black colleges and universities in the Deep South during the 1963 Christmas holidays. He has been the principal investigator or a co-PI on research grants totaling more than $13 million from such organizations as the National Science Foundation, the United States Department of Education, the Luminor Foundation for Education, the Sloan Foundation, and the Spencer Foundation. He is co-author, along with Ernest Pascarella, of the 2-volume How College Affects Students, an award-winning synthesis of more than 35 years of research on the impact of the college experience on students. The first volume, which I am intimately familiar with, was selected as one of the 100 most important and influential books about U.S. colleges and universities published in the 20th century. Please join me in welcoming Pat Terenzini. Now, they get to talk to us. Oh, there's my chair. Pardon me? And Dia, I think you're first. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we shall check the notes. It's a Dia. Could you please begin to give us some remarks?
First, I want to thank you all for being here. I am incredibly touched and honored. I was extremely caught off guard when I heard about the award, having met and gotten to know Holly Satea during her time here, which overlapped when I first got here almost 12 years ago. It just doubly made this super meaningful for me. I know about half the people in this room, pretty well, such that you have touched my life. And in reflecting on this award and where I am in my career, about to turn the corner into the back nine as I hit the midway point, I think about how I got here. And the first thing I have to be super honest about was I never wanted to be the diversity person. I just didn't. I was like, I'm a magical unicorn. I'm Black, gay, and female. And I really struggled with that for a while. I really resisted it. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm a double-degreed accountant. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make money. But as Steve Jobs said, you connect the dots going backwards. And as I look at my life, the gifts and talents I've been imbued with and the opportunities I've had, this is what I was put on earth to do. And my one word is connect. All of my gifts and my talents and the things that I give a damn about are about connecting. And it's because of the people in this room. And I can cite specific examples from Sally Yeager, who's sitting in the back, who's mentored me for more than 15 years. Dr. Deborah King, who showed up for me and all of the Black student community a few years ago during a pivotal point of crisis, to mentoring someone like Marley Peters with the AKAs, who took a budget of $400 4 years ago to a $30,000 budget now. And watching how each faction of this community has interacted, intersected, and even on our worst days, we've just done our best. And so I just want to say thank you for giving a damn.
Thank you. Thank you. And I believe you are definitely next.
Hello, everybody. So I'm not as decorated as my fellow panelists, so I actually prepared notes. My name is Alexandria Adams, and I'm an 18 studying biology and public policy. I'm honored to be here today to accept the Social Justice Award on behalf of the Xi Lambda chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha. I'm currently the president of the chapter, and I have enjoyed leading this illustrious organization. As Evelyn has said, AKA was the first Black sorority founded in 1908 at Howard University in Washington, D.C. The sorority was established on the premises of sisterhood, education, and service to all mankind. The Xi Lambda chapter was chartered at Dartmouth College in 1983 and has been committed to this mission ever since. All the women who joined Xi Lambda know this and are excited to work together to make a difference on Dartmouth's campus. Most of our activism comes by creating spaces for students of color and especially Black women. We hold events such as our annual sleepover for self-identifying freshman women, our ski day for students of color, Ivy Ball, which is a formal event that raises money for an organization that supports Black women, and our midnight barbecue during the spring term finals period. Every event that we have supports an underlying cause and/or supports students on campus. We also make sure to hold events during Black Legacy Month every year to celebrate the work of our ancestors. In fact, as Dia said, one of our sorors, Marley Peters, was instrumental in creating Black Legacy Month here at Dartmouth so that all students can celebrate Black history in February. One lesson that I've learned as a member of Xi Lambda is the importance of working together. It requires me and my sorors to decide what we think the Dartmouth community will benefit from and how we can go about creating a program that will represent this. From here, I would like to give a quick anecdote about AKA's Students of Color Ski Day. I grew up skiing in Michigan every winter, so I was excited to attend a college that owns a ski mountain. My freshman year, I took ski lessons to receive a PE credit, but I noticed that there were not a lot of other students of color that took advantage of this opportunity. So when I joined Xi Lambda my sophomore year, I brought this up to my sorors. My sorors and I brainstormed on how we could change this. We realized that there were systemic issues that prevented students of color from skiing, such as money, knowledge of the sport, and accessibility. Therefore, we created a ski day, which provided lessons, ski rentals, and transportation for only $5. I was so happy that this event was able to come together so that more students could take advantage of Dartmouth's resources. But I could not have done it without my sorors. Our chapter motto, "Unity is strength, strength is beauty," reminds us how much we can impact Dartmouth and the world by working together. Thank you, IDE, for recognizing the work done by Xi Lambda. We are excited to continue the legacy of our predecessors as we approach our 35th year anniversary in March. We will also continue to follow Alpha Kappa Alpha's purpose of service to all mankind.
Thank you so much. Now, aren't you forgetting something else, Alexandra, that you do?
That I do?
Yes, that you do.
So I was also a swimmer all my life, and so I teach students how to swim to pass the swim test.
And George, thank you. And George, you are next.
Hi, it's such an honor to receive this award. I'm so grateful to so many people that have poured into me throughout my Dartmouth career. Professors, staff, students. There have been so many people that have given me advice and believed in me as I worked on my nonprofit work. I want to share a bit of my background and why I do what I do. So I grew up in a small fishing town in Ghana called Winneba. And growing up, no one in my immediate community or family studied STEM subjects, so science or engineering. My parents and my two older sisters, none of them did science or engineering. And I really was interested in science, but the path to be a scientist or an engineer as I wanted wasn't really clear. But fortunately, at some point in middle school, during one of my family's holiday visits to visit my grandmother in Accra, the capital city, I found some encyclopedias in her library, and these encyclopedias were filled with all kinds of science experiments, and I was really fascinated. And I began reading them, and I proceeded to bring the whole set back to Winneba. And after getting these books, I would read them, get friends together to work on some of these science experiments. But one thing that I forgot to mention, so another problem that I faced was that, so in Ghana, the educational system is really theoretical, so it focuses on rote learning, and there isn't much emphasis on hands-on learning and real-life applications. So that was another challenge that we had, which also made it difficult. So I would get friends together, perform these science experiments, and so I proceeded to kind of continue with this kind of hands-on learning in high school, where I built a portable clothes drying machine because my clothes would get stolen anytime. I hung them outside to dry. And I would also get together friends. We started this science club project team where we work on real science experiments. for our speech and prize giving day, and also kind of work on projects to solve problems in our high school community. So one project that we worked on was a dishwashing machine, because dishes in our high school cafeteria weren't being washed properly. And so this kind of team actually inspired my friend and I to start this whole club idea where we teach people how to build solutions to problems in their communities. And so after high school, I applied to colleges in the US. I didn't really want to go to university in Ghana. So I actually got admitted to a university in Ghana, but I declined my admission offer, took a gap year, applied to colleges in the US. I was fortunate to get into Dartmouth. And when I came here, my education here made me very, very hyper aware of how broken the Ghanaian educational system is. And so I resolved to use every resource available here at Dartmouth to actually make a difference. And so I applied for grants, spoke to a bunch of people, I participated in all kinds of programs to give me the skills to do so. And so I started the nonprofit and Sister Foundation with these friends that I met in high school. So these are people that I've worked with for close to 10 years now. So we started in Sister Foundation, and we ran our first summer program that was actually modeled after Engines 21, one of the classes that I took here, which basically teaches students to build solutions to real-life problems. So basically, we started this nonprofit, ran this program, and now over the past 5 years, we've impacted so many people. And when I think about this, I'm really hopeful of what we can create in the next decade. I yearn to shape a society in which young Africans can grow up believing that they can build the next big innovation or invention. A society in which my two nieces in Ghana, currently aged 2 and 6, can grow up believing that not only can they be scientists and engineers, but the very best that the world has ever seen.
Now we're up to Zach.
All right. It's tough to follow all of you guys. At first, I just want to say thanks. This is a really incredible and humbling honor, and I think this is just such a really awesome initiative that Dartmouth does to celebrate the work that folks are doing to advance social justice and make the world a better place. I think Dr. King challenged us to make a career of humanity, and I think if there's one thing that we can take from this group of folks is there's not one way to do that. There's not one path. There's really so many different ways that you can take that advice and make your life about it. A quick reflection, I guess, on mine. I think one of the questions we were posed with is talk about how your passion has roots at Dartmouth. And I think about the passion for social change has roots at Dartmouth. And I think about it, and actually I think for me it actually started long before I got to Dartmouth. And I think it's something I really learned from my family, from my parents. My mom's a pediatric nurse practitioner. My dad worked in the public schools. Both my parents worked in the public schools. And I think I really took from my folks that that we're here to make the world a better place, to make the world healthier and happier and more equal, more just. And that's something that I think was really ingrained in me from an early age. And I guess for those of you who are parents, I would challenge you to do the same in your words and your actions. And certainly hope that by the time that I'm a parent, I'll do that as well. But the reality is actually when I got to Dartmouth actually really played a huge role in making me effective in actually pursuing social change. And I got really tremendous opportunities here on campus, particularly through the Dartmouth Center for Social Impact, and working there on everything from the blood drives as a freshman through to the trip to Nicaragua on the community health team. That was, believe it or not, my first time outside of the U.S. I showed up at Dartmouth without a passport. I'd never been outside of the U.S., and I've now lived outside of the U.S. for the last 10 years, and traveled in dozens of different countries. Worked from Zimbabwe to the Dominican Republic to South Africa, and on projects kind of all around the globe. And it's been quite a journey from growing up in the Midwest and and never having left the country. And Dartmouth, I think, really opened my eyes to so much of the injustice in the world. I mean, we feel we may be in a bit of a bubble. I think a lot of us work to challenge that bubble on campus, and there's clearly some tremendous work going on. I mean, for me, I actually spent 11 months of my 4 years at Dartmouth were outside of the U.S. And working in the field and really getting a sense of what was going on in under-resourced parts of the world that I hadn't been exposed to as a kid. And I guess what I would say is, a couple pieces of advice or thoughts on sustaining your energy for this kind of work, is especially for students. Which, by the way, you're right in the middle of midterms, so kudos to all of you guys for sticking this out. So a couple thoughts on kind of keeping at this work, and certainly again my path has been unconventional to say the least. From working in HIV prevention in South Africa to doing epidemiology and taking a focus on research, to moving into technology and working with dozens, now hundreds of nonprofits around the world to help them be more effective. What I would say is it's really important to know your why, and everything comes back to that. If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to come around and say, "Wow, this person, this guy or this gal is brilliant. I want to bring them into my why," right? And there are a lot of people who will suck you into their why. And so I would challenge you, especially those of you kind of going off to start your careers, to really check in and know your why and what it is that you're working to achieve. And the second is to build your team with supporters who can help you along the way, and not be afraid to ask for help. People want to help out, and I think I've been really blessed with tremendous supporters from the Dartmouth community over the years in particular. And lastly, I would say is to really go all in. You really need to put your whole self and bring your whole self to your work, whatever it is the work that you do. And if you find yourself in a job where you're only bringing 50% of yourself to that job, like, you're gonna be achieving 50%, at best 50% of the potential results and impact that you could be achieving. So know your why, right, and make sure you're dedicating yourself to that, and then really bring your whole self to that. Last thing I'll say before handing the mic off is you really need, if you're working and dedicating your life to social change, you really need to stay focused on the end result. I think in this day and age with social media, all of us on social media all the time and distracted, it's really easy to get sucked into the optics, and it's really easy to mistake motion for progress. So I would challenge us all to really focus on the end game, focus on the end results that you're working to achieve, and don't lose sight of that. Don't get sucked into, I did my job today because I made a Facebook post about something I'm upset about, right? Like, get out and make a difference. We got 86% of 18 to 29-year-olds are on social media using it for 40 minutes a day, and 46% of that age group voted in the last election, right? So let's get out there and actually and get to work.
Thank you. Thank you. He has passed the mic on to the professor.
Gosh. I want to thank everyone for this particular honor, because it's always at some level very heartwarming to have important someones, colleagues and friends and comrades, acknowledge the things that have been important in one's life. But certainly for some of you I know who have approached me at different times about this, and you've been effusive in terms of, "Oh, congratulations, you must be so excited." And you don't get that sort of response in return from me. And in large measure, that's because I don't think of what I do as special or particular. I don't think about it in terms of me as an individual. So for me to think about sort of accepting this award I was only able to do so in my spirit by saying that it was a way of recognizing the collective and collaborative work of so many others who've been engaged in social justice. And it almost seems in some ways sort of a betrayal of that spirit to sort of be singled out. But I appreciate being singled out. Now, there is a little ego in there, just a little, just a little. But part about doing social justice work, of course, is to rein in our egos, to manage our self-interest in the pursuit of something larger than ourselves, something more important than ourselves. And so for me, I want to sort of acknowledge those groups that have been there all of my life. It's sort of interesting to think back. I think I was maybe after I've been here at Dartmouth 10 years. And I sort of look back over my life. I don't know what was the occasion for making me do that. And I sort of realized, oh, I've always been this sort of organizations person. I've always been in groups involved with trying to bring about social change. Oh, that was always in my family. When I look at my grandparents, my mother, my aunts and uncles, these were individuals who were involved in the Urban League, the NAACP, in SNCC, in SCLC. Those were the normal things in my household. It was typical in my household over dinner to have extended political debates and arguments, along with theological discussions and interpretations about what it meant to be a Christian and how do you apply it in a range of different circumstances. But it's always been in that group context that I've learned, that I've grown, that I appreciate those who've modeled that behavior for me, and that I've worked to try to be a good practitioner of what it is that they taught me. And when I was, the particular question about Dartmouth, in some ways, if we think about, okay, why Dartmouth and how did Dartmouth figure in this, partly I think it's, well, I've been here almost 4 decades, so maybe this was an endurance recognition. Just simply hanging in there long enough, right? But I want to say some of the things that Dartmouth did, or more so, let me be more precise. Some of the things that the individuals and the groups and people who have been here, who I've been pleased to call my friends, who, and I could, stories I will not tell unless you ask me, about, the stories that activists tell, our so-called war stories. And so in thinking about that, I'm thinking about those groups, but I'm thinking about, because they were here, they helped to complicate as well as enrich my understanding of what social justice is and what it takes to accomplish it. Less to accomplish it, to make progress toward it. And I think I'll just mention a few of them. And I think first and foremost, it was having a Native American community here. It is so unique and so special at Dartmouth. And I think there are so many ways that the vast majority of us don't pay attention to it. But I really try to get to know them, to know something about their peoples, their history, their culture. And it really began reshaping how I thought about the work I was committed to It complicated it because there were times I also had to acknowledge that African Americans were involved in horrific crimes against Native peoples. The sort of idea of, that's what I mean by complicating it for us. And so there have also been the groups that I've learned from in a variety of ways. And I'll say this, that's sort of the last thought for this moment. You know, faculty, we don't ever run out of thoughts and ideas, and, and we can go off. But there have been a group of faculty administrators and the Marshall Eastman and Chavez dissertation fellows who formed a group that was my solace and are some of my most beloved and dearest friends, mentees, mentors. But if I were to say anything for anyone involved in social justice work, it's critically important that you have a group around you that shares your values, that challenges you to remain faithful to those values, who keep your spirits up during the really difficult and hard times, and there will be many of those. They have been an extraordinary blessing, an extraordinary blessing. And I know that I would not have lasted this long in this place without them. Thank you.
And she, the professor, has handed the mic over to another professor.
Everybody heads for the doors. Thank you, man. I'd like to start by thanking the Rockapella singers. That was a really moving performance. And thank you for it. It was troubling for this white guy, old white guy. But as the saying goes, I think I needed that. I want to thank Evelyn and certainly the members of the awards selection committee for the honor of being here. I've said before that knowing that people read whatever you write is very satisfying. And it's even more gratifying when they like what they read. But this award is special for me because I hadn't thought really until all of this began about my own commitments to social justice. And in connecting the dots backwards, I realized it probably started not exactly at Dartmouth, but Dartmouth certainly played a part of that. And I was not aware fully of just how much a role it had played until a few years ago. But my journey really began with my parents. Like Dr. King's family, mine were not college educated. My father had an 8th grade education. My mother was went to a normal school to become a teacher. She taught in a one-room schoolhouse. But we were a Catholic family. And my grandparents were immigrants from northern Italy. But in growing up, I learned from my parents, particularly, the importance of justice. It was never called that. It was never discussed openly. But the concept of being fair and being dealt with on an even-handed way was important to me. I also learned the value of an education and the importance of an education. I mentioned my father's elementary school education. And there came a point in my life when I had a brother who went to college, but he was old enough so I hardly ever knew him. Another brother went to college. He also was much older. I was the last one. I was the surprise. But my family, I don't want to make this too long. Anyway, came a point where my father and mother made a decision that they were going to offer what had been sort of the family cabin. There was never running water, never electricity, nothing very elaborate, but it was in a beautiful setting in Vermont. And they were going to offer it to my sister. And that place had special importance for me. And after some years afterwards, I asked my father in a quiet moment, I said, you know, why did the rest of us not have an opportunity to buy in? And he said very simply, he said, oh, there's one other qualification. My sister had gone to a college, but never finished because she got married. And so she had never finished her education. My father's response to my question was, our gift to you is your education. And I've never forgotten it, and what that has meant. I want to thank the Lester Granger's family, and you stop and think about it. 4 guys from the same family attended Dartmouth in the early 20th century. The class of '64 that I came in with had 3 black faces in it. 2 of them were African, and 1 was an African American. There were 4 Asian students, 3 of whom were international students. And there was a message there. There was a message there, even if the college didn't intend it that way. My thanks to the Tucker Foundation for funding that trip that Evelyn alluded to. And my gratitude to Dartmouth for giving this lower middle class white Catholic kid from a small, obscure high school in Vermont, valedictorian, but probably the worst SAT scores that any valedictorian had ever presented to Dartmouth, for giving me a chance and the opportunities. And that trip started in my senior year, fall term, the end of the fall trimesters then, and the winter trimester, with a lecture by an African-American, not much older than I was, who is a law student at Howard University. His name was Ben Brown, and believe it or not, I remembered that name 50 years later. And this is, I'm a guy who can't remember what he had for breakfast yesterday. But he made a powerful presentation of what was happening in the young black communities at the time. This was in the early 1960s. This was the emergence. The civil rights movement had been around in one form or another for years, but this was the movement that was beginning in my lifetime. And with guys my age sitting in at lunch counters and being arrested for it in Greensboro, North Carolina. Well, we talked with Ben Brown for several hours afterwards about what role or what contributions we as Dartmouth students might make. And 4 of us decided it would be a good idea to visit all black institutions, historically black institutions, private ones, because this was for Dartmouth, that might arrange exchange students between the 2 schools. So we took our winter break, and that's where we went. We visited Fisk University, Morehouse, and 2 others. But along the trip, we read about and learned, I think probably for the first time, about Lester Maddox and the Pickrick Restaurant in Atlanta, which was getting national attention because Lester Maddox was a full-throated racist who, at his restaurant, was handing out baseball bats that white racists could use to beat student demonstrators. So we thought we would look into the Pickrick. And so we went there for a cup of coffee. Well, it turns out Lester Maddox, we didn't know this ahead of time, also was in the habit of circulating at the tables of people in his restaurant. And lo and behold, here comes Lester Maddox toward 4 guys who were in the South to promote racial integration. And he sat down with us and asked us where we were from. And of course, as soon as we opened our mouths, he knew we weren't local. And when he found out, we were honest with him. We told him why we were there. And he stood up and drew himself up to, I think he was a short dude, about 5'6", and said, "I will appreciate it if you will leave my restaurant." And, you know, we'd never been kicked out of a place before. We left, but left cold, and I still get chills when I think about it. We went to Birmingham on our trip, and along the way, here's 4 white guys and a black guy. Ben Brown was accompanying us on this trip. Driving to Birmingham, and the cars, it's easy to see, the cars would pass us on the highway, and the white occupants in the cars would be looking over their shoulder at us, and we knew they weren't just curious. We stopped at a Howard Johnson's restaurant, and I encountered racism up close and personal for the very first time in my life. Vermont was lily white when I grew up. First black guy I ever knew was a Dartmouth student. But we were told that we would be served, but our friend Ben Brown would not be. While we were in Birmingham, we visited the Baptist Church, the 16th Street Baptist Church, where 4 young girls were killed in a bomb blast. We couldn't see the hole, but we could see its general dimensions because there was a tarp over the hole. We could see the trees in the park in front of the church, where the bark had been peeled off the trees by fire hoses that were trained on demonstrators. Now again, this is a white kid growing up in a lily white Vermont. This was quite a shock, and obviously I still remember it. On part of the trip, we went to visited Morehouse College, and we had a wonderful chance to meet Benjamin Mays, 27 years the president of Morehouse College. Considered, well, he was one of the leaders, if not the leader, in the integration of the public school system in Atlanta. And he's an icon, for those of you who've never heard his name before, he's an iconic figure in the early civil rights movement. And here's these 4 Dartmouth guys come to rescue black education in the South. And Dr. Mays, in the most gracious, gentlemanly, gentle way you could imagine, said to us, in effect, "Thank you, but Morehouse College doesn't need Dartmouth College." And talk about an introduction to talk about arrogance or being called out on one's arrogance, and he'd never thought of it that way before. I've never forgotten that, the arrogance of the assumptions that underlay racism. And so he kindly thanked us for thinking of Morehouse and considering Morehouse students, but they'd take a pass this time. And it was really a lesson in humility and poor assumptions. After that, I mean, the rest of the part of my journey included things like teaching in Newton High School, Newton North High School, just outside Boston, which is a Tony upper-end, expensive got a very solid tax base to support the public schools. And 6 months later, teaching in Dorchester High School in Boston, which was right next to Roxbury. And it was a tough neighborhood, and it was a tough high school. And the contrast could not have been stronger. A couple of years later, I taught at a Tony prep school in Colorado, and that was pretty, I mean, again, the advantage of whites was totally clear. It led me into my research. And as I said, I was always interested in education. And how could I turn what I was doing as an educator and someone interested in educational research, turn it to the issues of equity and justice and fairness in the educational system? What could I do that would help other students have access to some of the advantages I had had access to at Dartmouth? And among one of the studies I did with some colleagues, it was part of a project of differences between low income, we did a literature review primarily, low income students and high income students in terms of their preparation and their experiences of college and the outcomes. And when we got all done with the project, we referred to as the Dream Deferred Project. This is the English major in my background coming out, and the reference to the poem, What Happens to a Dream Deferred. When we were all done the report, I was looking for a title to synthesize in a phrase what our report found. And we chose Swimming Against the Tide, because that seemed to me the essence of what we had found, the disparities between low-income kids, high-income kids. And we tried to tell the story in terms of the preparation for college, the selection process, the obstacles that they were against and facing in just about every area of the college experience. And it was overpowering. And I kept, and after that, I don't think I ever designed a study or took part in a study that didn't include what are in the trade called conditional effects, the effects of college that are conditional or related to some characteristics of the students themselves. Usually it was race or ethnicity and gender. And I followed that through the end of my career, and I still worry about it, and I still think about it. And I think back to, and finally, to the importance of education and the importance of travel, of getting out of your own place, confronting something new. And I hadn't heard it until a few weeks ago. Somebody quoted Mark Twain, who spoke of travel. It says, travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And two of the worst decisions I ever made in my life related to travel, and they were made at Dartmouth College. I had the opportunity to take a semester abroad, and I didn't. I had the opportunity at graduation to teach English for 3 years in Hong Kong, and I didn't. And I have told my children over the years that those are the two worst decisions I'd ever made in my life, and I still believe that. Well, I hope I didn't eat up all of our time, so we have...
But we're going to give the audience an opportunity to ask a question. And you want to jump at it, because if you don't, I will ask a question. And then I also always save about 30 seconds to tell them. Each year I give a promise to the group before they leave. So if students need to get wherever they're supposed to be right now. You can't say, we were at that thing. All right. So, question from you, or shall I throw my one out? Oh, good. I'll throw my one out. How do you see our current, and any one of you can answer, how do you see our current national climate impacting higher education?
I can give you my short answer to that question because it's occurred to me over the last year, particularly in watching the disintegration of our political system, that I think what happened in the last year and a half may be the worst indictment I have ever seen of American higher education. And I believe that if American colleges and universities have been producing graduates with no more ability to analyze arguments, to think critically, and to understand the importance of higher education to civic community and to being a democratic citizen, then we have failed miserably. And so anyway, I'll be happy to argue that later if anybody's interested.
And I know I'm standing between people and food, so what I will do is, if there's no other response, I think that probably hit it on the head. Well, each year for the awardees, I provide a promise to you, and this year will be no different. And I guess there are probably 5 of them. And it's our promise to you. We promise to have courage to battle our fear of failure when working for social justice, knowing our successes will far outweigh our failures. We promise to hold tight to our integrity, always putting the health and safety of living beings over our personal gains. We promise to respect our enemies, for they can be some of our best teachers. We promise to be patient with the slow process of change, but stubborn in our pushing forward. We promise to remember our promises to you, but that memory will inspire us to gracefully grow as a country, suffer as human beings, and commit ourselves to learning this place, leaving this place, in better shape for those who find our footprints on the snow and the green. Thank you for coming out. And now there's food.